I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with the cattle market summary for the week ending May the 22nd. These cattle markets just keep defying the naysayers and not by getting any higher, but just by holding the levels that we've had here for the last several weeks and months really, and staying good pretty much all this calendar year. We know we're getting into heavier supplies of market ready cattle. Got a lot of these calf feds coming on, but pretty much has been offset by the seasonal increase in beef demand so far. So those things are kind of balancing out, which is good so far. And by this market staying as good as it is, as long as it is, it just keeps pumping everything up down the road too. But seems like the analysts are just in a big hurry for this market to break. And that's why we see the big basis between cash and what live cattle futures are. That they have to remember that it's going to take a while. Beef is one of the slowest ag products to increase, and you know, maybe these big hog confinement facilities or the poultry too can turn it up pretty quick. It's almost like they have a big dial on the outside of those buildings. They can just turn it up or turn it down on production, but you can't do that with cattle. You know, cows have to run out and it takes a lot of country for that. It takes a long time to grow those heifers, to get them bred, to get the calves on the ground, get those raised. So it's going to take a while, and probably through 2015 we have a reason to believe that the market's going to stay pretty good. Now sure, coming down the road we're going to have more numbers and the market's probably going to back off, but I think we're kind of in a new norm where these markets are going to stay fairly close to where they're at. We're not going to get back down, you know, $50, $60 fats and things like that, at least not for a long time, as there's just more people and there's less cattle and less places to put cattle. But those analysts are really reluctant to recognize that, also reluctant to do anything to really support the market. And today we saw, here on Friday, we saw an early cattle on feed release due to the upcoming holiday, and I think that's what they've decided to do now. Every time the cattle on feed comes out right ahead of a 3-day holiday weekend there, they're going to have it out at 11 Central instead of 2 o'clock Central. But come out there on feed totals as of May the 1st, 101%, very close to expectations. The marketings through April have fed cattle at 92%, and that was very close, but really missed the placements by a long ways. The average of analysts' guess was way over 100 there and come in at 95, which is extremely bullish right there. And that's 95% of the same time a year ago, which we didn't have very many feeder cattle placed last year at this time either. But you would have thought maybe that would have did a knee-jerk reaction to the CME cattle futures because they were still open. And you know, a lot of people were nervous about that, thinking that report would come out, and instead of having a few days to think about it, they might have a knee-jerk reaction. But didn't hardly see any of that bullishness. You know, thought maybe one of your contracts of live cattle would be up the limit or something, but they didn't. We did see a little bit of support for the deferreds out there, but actually your nearby contracts were a little lower. Your feeder cattle futures, they were gaining anyway, and they all closed up on either side of $1. But we've lost May now, and we've gone on to August and September, and they're still quite a ways from what these guys think that their steers are worth coming off grass that time of year. So really they haven't seen any support really on the futures for quite a while, and that's the big reason for that basis like we talked. But yearlings this week sold fully steady and up to $5 higher in spots, mostly in places that are close to the corn belt because of those farmers and farmer feeders and your commercial feeders up there too see what kind of a corn crop they're going to have. They know feed's going to stay cheap and they want to stay in. Your calves, the southeastern calf market was very uneven ahead of this holiday, and a lot of those guys were trying to wrap up their orders or maybe finished up their orders, and because all those early week sales next week are going to be closed down. So very uneven in the southeast. And you get back in the central part of the United States where calves were offered, weaned calves and desirable type calves, they sold really well. Most markets didn't have enough to test the market, but some spots were as much as $10 higher on some of those popular weights. You look there on Cattle Market Central, you saw we had a load of steers in Salina at Farmers and Ranchers there weighing 821 pounds, bring 218. That's about where the board's trading right there on the feeder cattle futures, but this is on 821 pound steers, and that board's based on a 750 pound steer. But that's a good market there for 218. That's from commercial feedlot buyers right there. Now you go up north there where you get into the big part of the Corn Belt, and we saw 2 loads of fancy steers in Valentine, Nebraska, weighing 815. They brought 228, $10 more. And that was from farmer feeders, and there's not a whole lot of farmer feeders up there in northwest Nebraska. All this demand came from eastern Nebraska and Iowa, pushing those cattle up to those big prices. Now in your calves, we had some big prices too. You see on Cattle Market Central at the South Central Regional Stockyards in Vienna, Missouri, where they have really good cattle sitting in a part of the country where you don't think the cattle are that good, but really have nice cattle right there at that sale. And they had a load of 651-pound steers bring 271, and that's all for good price there. Fat cattle market this week had a kind of an early week trade, or a midweek. Seems early because a lot of times they wait till late Friday to do anything, but we saw some midweek trade there. Kansas sold steady at 161, and that was awfully good. Now the North's starting to trade at a little discount to the Southern Plains because they're getting into so many of those calf feds, and any of those cattle up in that part of the country, when they come off, they're weighing pretty heavy and have to go right on feed. And so a lot more calf feds up there. Your northern feedlot areas traded a little bit lower from 159 to 160. Dress sales were a little more lower from 251 to 253. But box beef prices posted another record there middle of the week, or on Tuesday there. Had a record-breaking session last week and had a record-breaking session this week. But when we got to the latter part of the week, after those wholesalers had bought up what they needed for the holiday weekend, it really fell back hard. But nevertheless, had a record-breaking session there on Tuesday. And it's going to be very important to get good clearance of our meat cases on this holiday weekend. Probably won't be a real good clearance there in the central part of the United States because they'll just continue to get those big rains and flooding, and not the kind of weather where you want to use up a lot of beef. But your heavily populated areas along the eastern seaboard there, and from New York all the way down into Florida, is going to have beautiful weather through the holiday. And we expect to see a lot of holiday grilling there, and we hope they really clear out a lot of that meat, so it'll be continued good demand going into next week and entering into the summer months. But that wraps up your cattle market summary for this week. Go on to Cattle Market Central and check out those real-time feeder cattle prices there. Go to DV Auction, check that out. I have auctions every week on there, plus your production sales, and you can see this report on the StockExchangeNews.com. So for your cattle market summary, that wraps it up. We'll talk to you next week.